Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 158, which is called The Man Who Disappeared. So we're starting off this sort of new Kara focused arc that's meant to be, I suppose, a setup before we get to our next manga like canon arc, basically. I think the way we're meant to view this is it's the equivalent of the prison arc that set up the Mujina Bandits arc from sort of the last time we kind of got canon content. So I definitely really enjoyed the episode because obviously the key points here are that we get to, more properly introduced to two members of Kara. Victor, who obviously is an important plot point in this episode, but then I think we get to see Deepa at the very start of the episode, that Kara member. They focus on eating the fruit and then kind of jumping down, with I think the teaser for next week's episode sort of implying that is his skill transformation and going undercover, and that he'll be introduced after this. Because again, these are the sort of Kara members who in the manga right now aren't in focus, so they're using the anime to flesh these two out. In addition to some other things, we get to meet a new Leaf Jonin in Mugino, who again is in the manga, but here's some more setup for him. So I think that an episode like this is doing exactly what the anime needs to do, sort of expanding out on some of the details, the background on Kara, characters, and so on. And overall, I thought this episode actually accomplished quite a bit. It was intriguing. And it feels important because it's a setup for an actual manga arc as well. So what happens here is that we get an initial conversation between Boruto and Sasuke as Boruto is doing some training about how Boruto should focus on doing his missions and learning from as many people as he can to be better going forward, and that will serve him well when he does get his opportunity to get involved in the bigger conflict. Sasuke just worries that right now, if he gets involved in them, he might get himself killed. And then he gives him a sort of fingerless glove here to wear over the karma mark, so that it's not just immediately visible and he doesn't get himself into more trouble than he needs to. So I suppose it's kind of significant that he's wearing it when he meets a member of Kara here in Victor, and it's not noticed. I suppose that's mainly why it's here in this episode, but just interesting, slight switch up in the character design, just with Boruto wearing a glove on one hand now. But they get this mission to go to basically missing person investigation. They have to go to the Land of Valleys, and specifically a sort of medical company who's developing I suppose both medicines as well as prosthetics. Victor then later explains in the episode it's that they're doing a lot of research into people who have lost limbs and how they can potentially regrow those limbs from basically their own DNA, rather than just getting a peg leg or something like that, like Victor has. But then Boruto brings up that my dad has one of them, and this becomes an interesting plot point in that obviously Naruto's arm is basically from Hashirama cells. So Victor points out that not everyone has access to that, so we're researching something else. But then at the end of the episode, Mia, the client, her husband, is revealed to sort of be, I suppose, possessed in some way by the Hashirama cells, because just before they meet him in the cave, you see what clearly seems to be evidence of wood style sort of stuff going awry, with the sort of branches stemming out of the cave all over the place. That's what it seems like. So I suppose next episode we'll get a full explanation on that. It'll be interesting to see who's the first character to recognize them as Hashirama cells, and if it is or is not wood style, because this is where we get into the idea of as far as we're aware, Konohamaru should be able to recognize this as wood style, because I think one of the Boruto data books says that is it Moegi can actually do wood style, but we've never seen her do it. So they're direct teammates effectively. So Konohamaru should be familiar with wood style, given that he knows someone who can do it. But we'll see exactly how that plays out. That was always a weird piece of information, given that they've never come back to it. But the next episode, I think, is literally called the Hashirama Cell. So we'll see how they found this, came across Hashirama cells all the way out here. It looked like in the cave when they looked down at the sort of root of where all this was coming from, it was like some sort of a shrine. So maybe there was some sort of shrine to Hashirama where some of his cells were there, and it's been found here. Because like they seem to imply a little bit of like, you know, kind of subterfuge basically in the underneath of this company that oh, it's just a competitive medical field where all the companies want to you know, steal information from each other. It's like business competitive. But then Konohamaru points out that, yeah, but more than likely it's these companies hiding the fact that they're going into basically forbidden places, and, you know, going places they're not meant to go, doing things they're not meant to do, and that's probably what they want to hide. So I'm guessing it's some sort of a site they were never meant to go to for whatever reasons. They've broken those rules, and now we have the sort of Hashirama cells sort of going out of control. Because the whole, I suppose, idea of prosthetics and addressing, like with Victor, the idea of, you know, surviving the war, and how the ninjas call it, you know, the Great Ninja War, and he's like, well, it's named, of course, by you ninja, but for normal people, it's just this terrible, terrible thing. That kind of plays a role within the next section of the manga, with, you know, a certain character who plays a major role in it, and his like reappearance. So thematically, this is actually very good setup for what we're going to get to once this, I suppose, setup anime arc is over, and we go back into canon content. Not canon content, but like, you know, the manga content directly. So they're very on note, on theme here with this, and especially Victor. Like, I expected there to be more sort of outward, like, he's clearly up to villainous acts, and outside of just like, okay, he's trying maybe too hard to get all of the, you know, supplies and stuff like that the medical company needs. He seems to have a good goal at heart, but then you sort of realize that, wait, we basically know he is a Kara member, since, you know, you can connect the dots between the visuals we saw from before with this guy. How much of this research is then being sent back to Kara to, you know, give to them to increase the power of their members, their organization? Again, it's so interesting to view this now where the manga is, and like I could go really in depth into maybe making some connections, but if you haven't read the manga, it'd be maybe too spoilery to even at all go into it, because we're still in the process of like just discovering what Kara actually is. So really talking about it at all would be probably a little bit too far if you haven't read the manga. But yeah, so far so good, I think. I actually like the addition of Mugino on the squad. They got across that with him, he has been outside of the village for quite a while, involved in conflict-ridden disputes between the smaller, I suppose, villages and nations. He kind of points out the idea that, okay, the war is over, but the war was between like involving the five great nations. They now have like a peace treaty, but that doesn't mean the smaller nations, the smaller issues have gone down at all. And that's what I think the significance of like the last couple of episodes were, with the idea of like the Land of Rain still suffers once again in like the aftermath of war and so on. That was a plot point in Naruto, it's a plot point now in Boruto. Stuff like that is continuously going to come up, just because I suppose the leadership can only go so far if you're focusing on just the idea of like five nations, five leaders. They can't have an impact on every single thing. And so Mugino, the lesson that Boruto seems to be learning here is, when you meet people for the first time, don't immediately trust them. It's helped me survive through all of these tough times. And then the joke is like, you know, Boruto's like, oh, but I've only just met you too. And Mugino's like, yes, so don't trust me. And he completely buys into his own information. I feel there probably is a little bit of a character arc with him coming up, where we'll probably learn that there's more to him than just being sort of detached and sort of emotionless. which already he was beginning to open up a little bit more to the others. Like he was talking to Mitsuki, talking to Boruto. So by the time we end this arc and go into the manga arc, where he's also in that, I assume he'll have a little bit more development, because like Konohamaru mentions that like he's kind of close friends with him, so I suppose we'll get to see a little bit more as we go through. But yeah, not too much action in this one. We got to see a little bit of sort of stealthy information gathering from Mitsuki when he used the snake to get the information from the computer screen while everyone else did the distraction. That was nice, you know, Mitsuki coming in clutch with that information gathering. But beyond that, it was mainly a setup episode, but a very, very good setup episode, because it's touching on, you know, Kara, members of Kara that even manga readers aren't particularly familiar with. We're getting close to the manga content. Hashirama cells, always an interesting topic, and then just the slight introduction of the theme of people injured by the war and healing them, especially if they've lost limbs, that coming into play is quite interesting. But yeah, we'll see how this goes. I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. I doubt the next one will be the resolution, so it's probably going to be maybe 3-4 episodes. Then we'll go into the arc. We'll see what exact way they do it. They might have another like more one-shot episode before we go directly into the main arc, but we'll see. Beyond that, yeah, they're my thoughts on the episode. I was a little worried from the preview that it was going to be like very not interesting, and then just the one tease of a Kara member, but actually watching it, it's completely intriguing throughout. So very pleasantly surprised with this one. But what are your thoughts on the episode? That's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.